الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
صلى الله عليه وسلم. استقيموا يرحمكم الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إن إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثله مددا قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن
ينال الآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت. اللهم قنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك سبحانك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت. تباركت ربنا وتعاليت فلك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أنعمت به وأوليت. نستغفرك اللهم من كل ذنب وخطيئة ونتوب إليك ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك. أنت الغني ونحن الفقراء إليك. اللهم هب لنا عملا صالحا يقربنا إليك. اللهم أحسن وقوفنا بين يديك. اللهم لا تخزنا ولا تفضحنا يوم العرض عليك. اللهم إنا نسألك إيمانا صادقا وقلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا وعملا متقبلا وجسدا على البلاء صابرا. اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم ارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا ولا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك ولا يرحمنا. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك الرضا وحسن الختام. اللهم إنا نسألك الستر والعفو والعافية في الدين والدنيا والآخرة يا رب العالمين. اللهم تقبل صلاتنا وصيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا. اللهم تقبل زكاتنا. اللهم تقبل تلاوتنا. اللهم بلغنا ليلة القدر يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا تحرمنا فضلها ولا تحرمنا خيرها ولا تحرمنا أجرها ولا تحرمنا ثوابها. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم يا رب العالمين انصر إخواننا في فلسطين، اللهم انصرهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم كن مع إخواننا في غزة، اللهم أمدهم بمدد من عندك، اللهم أنزل عليهم رضاك يا رب العالمين ورحمتك، اللهم ارحمهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم اعطف عليهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم احنن بهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم من ضيق عليهم فضيق عليه يا رب العالمين، اللهم من شد عليهم فاشدد عليه يا رب العالمين، اللهم من وسع عليهم فوسع عليه يا رب العالمين. اللهم زلزل الأرض من تحت أقدام اليهود، اللهم قتلهم تقتيلا، اللهم دمرهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم أنزل عليهم نقمتك يا رب العالمين، اللهم أنزل عليهم سخطك يا رب العالمين، اللهم أنزل عليهم غضبك يا رب العالمين، اللهم حرق عليهم بيوتهم، اللهم حرق عليهم بيوتهم، اللهم اقتلهم بددا وأحصهم عددا ولا تبق منهم أحدا، اللهم اشدد عليهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم ضيق عليهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم حرق قلوبهم على أطفالهم، اللهم حرق قلوبهم على نسائهم، اللهم حرق قلوبهم على أموالهم وديارهم يا رب العالمين، اللهم اقتلهم بددا وأحصهم عددا ولا تبق منهم أحدا يا رب العالمين. اللهم كن مع المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان يا رب العالمين، في برما وفي كشمير وفي إفريقيا الوسطى يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وأعل بفضلك كلمتي الحق والدين يا رب العالمين ويا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك أن تكون مع المستضعفين يا رب العالمين. اللهم لعن الظالمين في كل مكان يا رب العالمين. اللهم من عاون اليهود على المسلمين فاشدد عليه يا رب العالمين. اللهم من ساند اليهود على المسلمين فاشدد عليه يا رب العالمين. اللهم كن مع إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة وفي كل مكان يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصرهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم قوهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم أعزهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم أذل الظلم والظالمين. اللهم أذل الظلم والظالمين. اللهم أذل الظلم والظالمين. اللهم اجعلنا يا مولانا في شهرنا هذا وفي ساعتنا هذه من عتقائك من النار، واجعلنا من السعداء الفائزين المقبولين، واجعلنا من الذين تجري من تحتهم الأنهار في جنات النعيم، دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام، وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم أعد للمسلمين مجدهم وعزهم، وصن بلاد المسلمين من كل مكروه وسوء، وسوء ورد الناس إلى الحق والعدل واهدهم إلى صراطك المستقيم يا أكرم الأكرمين يا رب العالمين. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين وأدخلنا الجنة بسلام يا كريم. صلى الله عليه وسلم.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. I know it's been a long night for many of you and so those of you who kept awake, I think it will be very difficult to concentrate on any long lecture and so on. But the topic that we are about to talk about is very important for all of us. It is one of the pillars of Islam. And while we are observing the other pillars of Islam, many of us want to observe also this other pillar of Islam in this month. And so we need to understand how to do it correctly, and that is the payment of zakah. And we'll talk about it in a more practical way, inshallah, and leave the floor open for any questions. Actually, from the very beginning of this month of Ramadan, I have been bombarded by questions about zakat. And I'm sure that other imams in all over this country would have had the same experience, having to answer those types of questions. And I don't know why we leave these things to the last moment. You know, if we know that we are paying zakat in Ramadan, then we should make sure that we have all of the teachings and understand correctly, you know, what we have to do before the month actually starts, before the time comes for giving. We should know exactly what to do, and the questions should have started before that. But this is how we are when the month actually starts. Then we see the urgency in doing something. And so we start to raise questions about it. So there is no need for me to establish that this is one of the pillars of Islam. And anybody reading the Quran and paying a little concentration on the meanings of it will know that there is an emphasis on the payment of zakah, on zakah being one of the foundations of Islam. Many places where the command is given to pay zakat, as well as we are told that other prophets in the past, before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also upheld this institution of zakah. So we'll not go into any details about that. but just a reminder for all of us, let me just mention one hadith about the consequences of not paying zakah. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من صاحب ذهب ولا فضة لا يؤدي منها حقها إلا إذا كان يوم القيامة صفحت له صفائح من نار فأحمي عليها في نار جهنم فيقوى بها جنبه وجبينه وظهره كلما بردت أعيدت له في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة حتى يقضى بين العباد فيرى سبيله إما إلى جنة وإما إلى نار. And this is in Bukhari and Muslim, where Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there is no owner of gold or silver and does not pay the due on them, except that on the day of judgment they will be molded into plates and plates of fire, and it will be heated in the fire of hell, and their sides and their foreheads and their backs will be branded with them. And every time they cool down, the same will be done again. It will be heated up again and they will be branded with it again. في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة. And this will continue throughout a day, the length of which is 50,000 years, until the judgment has been done between the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he will see his way either to Jannah or to hellfire. So the consequences of neglecting our zakah is severe. And of course, on the other hand, the payment of zakah brings with it lots of rewards, many benefits in this world as well as in the akhirah. But let us just think of the need that there is. You know, there's a lot of poverty. The wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, whether it's in this country or in Muslim countries in all parts of the world. The wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. The vast majority of people, the 99%, are under poverty, and many of them under very severe, extreme poverty, apart from the fact that a lot of other types of oppression is being done. And so zakat is one of those institutions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us to relieve the world of poverty. And it could be done if the rich Muslim countries were to give their zakah in a proper way. Then there would be no needy Muslim any part of the world whatsoever. And there would not have been a situation like what is happening in Gaza or other places, even in Burma and so on, where Muslims are being oppressed. Because the wealth, of course, along with it comes influence and power and so on. You know, a lot of things could have been done. We just need to reflect on that matter a bit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the best institution or institutions for the proper functioning and growth and progress of mankind. But mankind has rejected that, and so they are in the state that they are in today. I'll just mention a few of the rules concerning zakat, and then if there are questions specifically, we can perhaps look at those. The types of wealth on which zakat is due is like gold and silver and anything along those lines, money, cash, etc. There are also the trade goods, that is the stocks that the traders or the merchants or the sellers will have in their stores. They purchase these, they are bought by others. So anything that is bought and sold, these trade goods. Anything, of course, there will be of value, and of course they have to be halal and so on. Then there's also the cattle. These are different types of wealth that I'm mentioning. The cattle, camels, cows, sheep and goats. and there's the agricultural produce, all types of things that are produced by the earth, and there's also the minerals that are extracted from the earth, the precious stones and otherwise. So all of these things, there is zakat on them. And the conditions that make zakat compulsory for the person, the individual, what are his qualifications? He must be a Muslim, a person must be a Muslim, must be mature, sane, free, and the owner of the nisab. These are the conditions that all of the scholars agree on. But there is disagreement on children and people who are insane. Children may have wealth, maybe they inherited it from their parents or from others, and the insane the same also. And so the children and the insane people, they may not be capable of managing their wealth, but they do have wealth. If it amounts to the nisab, is the zakat due on it or not? Scholars differ about this matter. In particular, Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, says that it is not compulsory on them. You don't take zakat out from their wealth. But all or the majority of the other scholars of the other madhahib and so on, they say yes, zakat is due on the wealth itself as long as it fulfills the conditions, not looking at the person whether he is a child or mature or so. So as long as it fulfills the wealth itself fulfills the condition of being the type of wealth and being of the nisab and so on, then the zakat should be taken out from it. But this is what the majority says. One opinion of a scholar says that to balance between these two opinions, perhaps a medium way is if the wealth of the child or the insane person is stagnant, it is not being invested, it is not generating wealth, then zakat should not be paid on it, so that it does not go down, it does not dissipate from the zakat. But if it is invested and it is bringing in profits, then zakat is due upon it. And the conditions of the wealth itself is that there must be complete ownership. It must be owned by someone, it must be in the person's hands, he must have the ability to utilize it, and no other person has a right in it, with him, sharing in that. If there's any profits coming from it and so on, it goes to him. So if the owner has, all of these things, that is one condition, a complete ownership. Then it also must be actually increasing or capable of increasing. The type of wealth that is capable of increasing or actually increasing. So it is wealth that is invested and so it is bringing in profit, or it is a type of wealth that you have such as the animals that naturally produce and so it increases, or the earth that you are plowing and you're growing the food and so on, so that naturally increases. It must be of the nisab level. And what is the nisab level? For camels, it is 5 camels. If a person has 5 camels and over, then the zakat is due on it. For 40 sheep or goats. I'm saying these things very quickly, very briefly, without going into details. Many of us may not need this kind of information, but still, we need to know that it is there. 40 sheep or goats, 30 cows, and for silver, it is 200 dirhams, which amounts to 595 grams, or 21 ounces of silver. And for gold, it is 20 mithqal, or 85 grams, which is equivalent to about 3 ounces of gold. So how much is the silver worth? How much is the nisab for silver? 21 ounces of gold. The value of gold is how much? It is about $21 per ounce. So quickly do multiplication and tell me how much it is. And gold, what is the value of gold, the price of gold today? It is about 1,300. So more or less, it fluctuates a bit here and there and so on. every day perhaps it fluctuates a bit. I looked at it earlier in the month. It was just about $1,301. Last night I looked at it and it was $1,311. So it increases or it decreases slightly. So multiply that by 3. So almost about $4,000 is the nisab for gold. And for agricultural produce and grains and so on, it is 5 awsaq, which is 653 kilograms. For the agricultural produce, you give that at the time of the harvest. But for most of the other things, and especially what most of us will be dealing with, and that is the cash. You pay 2.5% on that, and it is what you would have saved for a year. And that is, we're talking about an Islamic year, a lunar year, not a solar year. There's a difference of about 10 days or so, but it could become significant. So we have to deal in the Islamic year. And it must be over and above one's basic needs. You may have the nisab, but it also must be over and above your basic needs. And what are your basic needs? The basic needs of all human beings: food, clothing, shelter. If a person also is in debt, and he has maybe very soon to pay back that debt and so on. So although he may have in cash the nisab, but it will be gone for him so quickly because he has to pay that debt. Then he doesn't have to pay zakat, he has to concentrate on paying his debt. Also, some of the basic needs of human beings is the tools of trade. Whatever trade you're involved in, the tools that you need to sustain that trade. If you must have that, and you don't pay zakat on that. So if it is perhaps a writer or a researcher or somebody in the computer field, and so maybe a computer is needed, right? So he doesn't pay zakat on that computer or on the software that he has to use and so on. And similarly, if it's a doctor and he has to have all the medical equipment, etc., he will not pay zakat on that, or a dentist with his chair and all the other equipment and so on. Whatever field a person is in, and he has to have certain equipment, he doesn't pay zakat on those. Also, all of us perhaps need transportation. It's a basic necessity of life these days, and so you don't pay zakat on your personal transportation. But if you have a fleet of cars, for example, that you rent out, or that you're using to produce income, you're maybe employing drivers and you're using them as taxis, as cabs and so on, the income from these you will pay zakat on, but you don't pay zakat on on that capital equipment that you have. The same with factories and so on that produce whatever stuff they produce. You don't pay on the factories, but you pay on the income that it generates, and also on the product that it produces. Just as maybe you also have need, for essential furniture in the home, furnishings of the home, including a stove and a refrigerator and so on. You don't pay zakat on these. And they say also the books of knowledge. The scholar needs his books, just like even a doctor needs his books, perhaps, right? And they have to have these resources that they keep checking all the time. You don't pay zakat on these things. And this is all just like, water. If you have water available, it is just sufficient for drinking. Then do you use it to make wudu with it? You don't, right? You make tayammum, and you save the water for drinking. So whatever is a necessity of life, you don't pay zakat on that. And the wealth also must be free from debt, so there is no zakat if the person has a debt which covers the nisab, or at least even partially it covers the nisab, so that if he gives it out, he repays the debt, then he will be below the nisab. Once that is the situation, then he does not have to pay the zakat. A person in debt, in fact, will actually be eligible to receive zakah. Now, the other thing is that he must have completed 1 lunar year, as I said. A year must have passed with that thing, the cash or the trade goods and so on in his possession. Except I mentioned for agriculture, produce and minerals and so on, because the moment these are, the crop is reaped, or the moment the minerals are extracted from the ground, zakat has to be paid on them. And how do we calculate it? 2.5% on gold and silver, as well as cash. And the question arises, which standard do you use for the nisab if you have cash? Is it gold or silver? Because there's a vast difference between the nisab of gold and the nisab of silver. Almost $500 is the nisab for silver, and almost about $4,000 for gold. So which one do you take? The nisab means that you have to have that minimum, and you have to have it for a year before your money becomes eligible for zakat. So which one is it? Scholars say both. I think perhaps the majority of scholars say the silver, because silver means that more people will be paying zakat and it will be more beneficial for the poor. And for a while, for many years, I've been thinking that it should be gold, because if you just have $500, although you may have had it for a year, it is nothing these days. It goes very, very quickly, and you have so many bills to pay at the end of the month and so on. So $500, having that is nothing. But then I reflected also, and I said that if you have been able to save $500 for an entire year, it means to say that you can pay zakat. How much will it be? If you have just $500 and you have to pay zakat on it, how much will that be? 2.5% of that is how much? Just remember this basic calculation. On every $100 you pay how much? $2.50. So $500, how much are you going to pay? It's nothing really. So anybody can pay that. Anybody can pay that. So to me, it doesn't matter whichever one. And most of us, perhaps, especially somebody who's working, will have $4,000 and will have that in the bank. So it is not difficult to pay zakat. You don't even have to look at what the nisab is these days, right? $500 and you can pay it. A person who receives a salary, every month he is receiving a salary. How does he pay the zakat? He deducts all of his yearly expenses. And of course, you may be paying those expenses on a monthly basis, your rent, your food, etc. So when you deduct all of that, whatever remains, and of course, once it is the nisab or over, you pay 2.5% of that. You don't pay on a monthly basis as soon as you receive it, but you pay on a yearly basis. So this includes all the ordinary workers who receive their salaries, whether weekly or monthly basis, as well as professionals. Most professionals will be receiving it like that, also a salary. So most of us will be dealing with actually cash in some form or the other. Maybe we don't even see that cash. It doesn't come in our hands. It's just a check or so that comes in our hands. It is deposited in our accounts, and maybe it goes out of our account also without us seeing it these days. We use our debit card or credit card or whatever, and it's gone. So whatever remains after all of our expenses, that is what we pay, 2.5% of that. And I mentioned that if a person owns like a fleet of cars, he's a cab owner, the income from that, again, whatever is accumulated, whatever savings is accumulated after the expenses and so on for a year, then he pays the zakat on that. The same with the factory owner, and people who are usually producing and so on. Or somebody who is a buyer and seller. He is a merchant, he's trading in various goods and so on. And so at the end of the year, he has stocks in his store. He calculates how much it will cost, how much, if he sells all of it now, how much it will be. The selling cost, not how much he paid for it, but the selling cost of it. and he pays the zakat on that. So, on gold jewelry, women may have gold jewelry. Most of the scholars, perhaps all of them, agree that if the jewelry is worn by the woman, if this is her personal property and she wears it and so on, then there's no zakat on it. And however, if it is gold jewelry that she's not perhaps normally wearing, it is there. It is perhaps like a sort of savings and a sort of guarantee in case of any difficult circumstances. So many people keep jewelry or gold like that. And of course, we're talking about gold jewelry or silver jewelry. These are the two things upon which zakat is eligible. Not on other types of jewelry, on these two in particular. If it is saved and it is hardly used, then the zakat should be paid on it. Some details about these matters, we don't want to go into all of the details. Many scholars say that you pay the zakat once, and especially for the jewelry that is being worn, you pay zakat once on it, and then that is okay. You don't have to pay on it after that. And, in a way, this opinion is also a reasonable opinion. Otherwise, over a period of years, if you constantly pay zakat, then eventually you'll be paying much more than the value of the jewelry itself. So these are some of the basic matters that we need to consider. I think this covers most of the matters, but there may be some technical questions that anyone has. So is there any question?
So take a mortgage, for example, and then it's kind of dead. So mortgage goes over the period of like 30 years, which is like you are not eligible for the zakat, or like, so it is like
No, what you have to pay immediately, the present installment, maybe for the month, for the coming month, or the coming few months, 2 or 3 months or so. You deduct that because that will be due almost immediately. But otherwise than that, if you have the nisab in other forms, maybe in cash or so, then you pay zakat on that.
One question.
Yeah.
If we have paid the zakat for this year, for example, I have $100, I have paid the zakat. So have I to pay next year also this $100?
Yes, if you have the same money saved, and you have even accumulated more than that, there are two things. One is that if you continue to have that money for a period of another year, you pay zakat on it again the next year. That is one thing. And the other thing is that whatever you have acquired during the course of that year also, you add it to that amount and you pay zakat on all of it. This is the easiest thing. As I said, rather than paying zakat on calculating every monthly salary that you get separately. In fact, if you do that, each monthly salary will not itself amount to the nisab. You put all of it together, it amounts to the nisab. You're building upon what you had previously, and it remains over the nisab at the end of the year. You pay on the entire thing.
So you could just look at the lowest balance from your last zakat date to this that's the money you have the whole year. The lowest balance.
Imam Abu Hanifa says, the Hanafi madhab basically is that if you start with in a particular month with the nisab, you have the nisab in this month, and this is the time that you start to calculate your zakat or keep check. So you've decided if you have the nisab for in the next year, this time, next Ramadan, then you pay zakat on it. What they say, what the madhab says, is that even if your wealth fluctuates and in the course of the year it goes below the nisab, and then it rises again at the end of the year, next Ramadan it is at the level or over the nisab, you pay zakat on it. You don't just remove all of that period and say that you're going to start counting again from the time after your savings dipped, and then when it rose again to the level of the nisab, maybe in the middle of the year, you don't say that you start to calculate the year from that time, but you're calculating the year from the time you started to have the nisab, the first time you started to have the nisab.
Some of the scholars say that if you buy diamonds and other things, there is no zakat on diamonds.
Yes, that's the opinion of most of the scholars. There's no zakat on that. But if you are trading in gold and in these things, then they are stock in trade. And once you have that, at the end of the year, you calculate how much it is and you pay zakat on it.
I'm not trading, I have diamonds.
If you have your personal diamonds and so on, then you don't.
Here I buy again diamonds instead of avoiding the zakat. So what's the case? I'm avoiding, I buy another diamond.
There are some tricks that the scholars have pointed out, scholars of the Sharia have pointed out, that a person can do in order to avoid paying zakat. But, but they caution us, right? This is not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your niyyah. This is not the proper thing to do. Yeah.
What about, you mentioned when you buy and purchase land?
Yeah, if you are doing it, if that is your business, right, you're earning money from it, you're purchasing and selling land for a profit. First of all, maybe you pay on the income that you get from that. Maybe you have that in your bank account and so on, the savings after you deduct your expenses and so on. But at the end of the year, if you have land, because that is your like stock in trade. So the value of the land, then you will have to pay zakat on that. Because this is what you're buying and selling. The same for houses or whatever it is. If you have a house just for personal usage, you don't pay zakat on that. If you have a house, a factory that is producing goods, wealth and so on, you don't pay on the factory. You pay on what it produces. But if you are buying and selling factories, or you're buying and selling houses and so on, then you pay on it, because that is your stock in trade.
If you have land and you just keep it, you're not renting it out, then you have to pay on the entire price of the land, right?
If your land is just sitting there, Islam encourages you to utilize the land in some way or the other. If it is agricultural land, it should be cultivated. If it is not agricultural land, then you should utilize it maybe for buildings or whatever, right? So land should not be left idle. This is the Islamic position. You don't have to pay zakat on it. However, in an Islamic state, that land can be confiscated if you're not using it. You have to maybe pay some penalty or the other for not utilizing it, because there will be, always need for the land, the utilization of the land. Yeah.
What did you say about the gold, the last point, gold, the certain types of gold, you only pay one time zakat and then you don't pay?
That is the jewelry. Jewelry that women wear.
Is it,
There are some scholars say that, and others say you pay every year on the jewelry.
so there can be two types of jewelry, one that your wife wears and then another set that she doesn't wear. Which one?
The set that is not worn, that is like savings for hard times. And so one should pay zakat on that on a regular basis, yeah. But the ones that are worn, those should be the different opinions about that, whether to pay once or to pay every year on that. A reasonable opinion is to pay once.
You have gold jewelry, but you don't have enough cash sell the gold and then pay the zakat?
I don't think that you're required to sell the gold for that purpose, especially if it is your wife's gold, your wife's jewelry. Well, actually, it belongs to her. She has to pay the zakat on it, not you. But if you volunteer and you give her that money and so on, that's okay. One thing is that the zakat does not have to be of the type of wealth itself, right? It doesn't have to be gold. It can be cash, in place of the gold, or so, right? The stocks that you have doesn't have to be in that form. It can be in the form of cash. So you don't have to, and if you don't have, then it's a debt that you have. And as soon as you acquire cash enough to pay off the zakat and so on, you should do that. You have to have them, but what usually happens is your stocks fluctuate, right? It goes down and up and down, so you may not have. And in fact, most of the things from your shelves will be gone within a year, right? And they will be replaced by new stock. More is coming in all the time. So at the end of the year, you may have entirely new stocks than what you had 1 year ago. But because it is constant, right? It is going and being replaced immediately. You calculate it at the end of the year and you pay on what you have. Yes, you use a monetary value.
I asked this question before, so let's say someone is much older, they have a little bit of saving left, that they keep, and they don't want to invest anywhere because it might go down or whatever. If they keep paying zakat on it, it's just going to keep diminished, right? So is there any darura law that comes into place?
I mentioned about the children, if they have wealth, and insane people, their wealth has to be managed by someone else, right? It is better for that person, that guardian, to invest their wealth rather than leaving it stagnant. Because there are scholars who say, in fact the majority of scholars say that you have to pay zakat on it. I haven't seen directly in relation to an old person who, but it should be the same ruling basically. If wealth remains stagnant, the zakat will eat it out until it falls below the level of the nisab, then the person will not have to pay zakat on it again, right? So rather than that, the person who is managing their wealth, somebody really has to manage their wealth. Even for the old people, maybe there's somebody who they need to manage their wealth for them. And that person should try to invest it so that this situation does not happen and they continue to benefit from their wealth.
Whatever you have the savings, you calculate the amount of that savings only. So what about 401k saving? We don't have the position of those 401k amount that we are put every month. So do we calculate 401k saving in the account?
A reasonable opinion that I heard is for you to calculate how much you would have in hand if you were to withdraw that money. That is, of course, after you pay your taxes and penalties, whatever you have to pay. Whatever you have in hand, you pay zakat on that, 2.5% of that. And until, of course, you do that every year until it's time for you to utilize it fully. I think most people have gone already, so all individuals may have still questions on zakat. We should close here, give everybody a chance to rest and so on. And whoever has questions still remaining and so on, they can always ask those questions, and we may have to do research on them and then come up with answers, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.